Welcome to our center. Reverend Karen's been prepping us on her talk, and she's all kind of revved up in there. So get ready for. She's all the rev is revved up and ready to go. So we're going to start the service with a song called "This Is the Day," and if you would please rise and join with us and to bring the Spirit up. Thank you.
This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day, a day to be seized, yeah. A day I can feel my spirit set free. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and higher up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day all my dreams come true. Feel the Spirit working its way through. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and higher up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it.
Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Clyde Goings. I'm the assistant minister here. I want to welcome you guys here on this beautiful Sunday morning. So thank you for joining us today. So we have a quick announcement before we get started. Reverend Susan's going to come up and talk about her visioning class.
Definitely right at the top. And you want to take this class because you are going to have the best time ever. We're going to be visioning for your life and for your center and for a lot of different areas, along with meaningful conversation and education. We're going to learn about visioning and the difference versus visualizing. So it starts this Thursday at 11 o'clock. $85 for the class, and that includes your accreditation. So I hope y'all can make it because I am so excited to teach this class. It has been on my agenda for quite a while, and I now feel healthy enough that I can do this too. And thanks for everyone that showed up to drumming. That was great yesterday.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. So what I like to tell people is that so meditation is like our first basic, learning how to meditate and learning how to be still. But when you vision, then you start teaching yourself to open up for that divine wisdom, for that divine intelligence, that divine intuition, right? And so it's a wonderful class, and it changed my life, and I really enjoy visioning when we vision as a group. So if you have time to join the class with Susan on Thursday, please plan to attend. It's fantastic. So all of our information is available on our website, which is wvcsl.com. We are still doing our Wednesday night Living the Science of Mind textbook. We meet every Wednesday at 6 o'clock to talk about, we're actually going through the textbook, not the textbook, but the other book, not the Living the Science Mind book. And we are going page by page. And right now we're in the middle of this month. We're talking about our spiritual principles, our 11 spiritual principles, what we believe. And it's been a really good discussion group. So the information is available on the website. And we get together every Wednesday. And even if you don't read the information, that's okay. You can come and still join the conversation and the discussion that we have. So hopefully we'll see you there. All right. So let's start with our visioning statement. Repeat it. We are a loving, joy-filled community, honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. So just sit back, relax, feel that loving support of that chair, and recognizing we're in a beautiful space as the Bradfords open us up with our beautiful meditation music. Thank you.
So take a deep breath. Relax as we move within.
I will make a quiet place within my heart. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
Right here and now, in this moment, I know that God is all there is. God is expressing itself as love, joy, ease, peace, prosperity, and wonder. As I open myself up to the knowingness that I am one with this divine presence, as each and every one of you are one with the divine presence, which lives, moves, and operates through me. Divine love flows to me and through me. As I grow in a greater awareness of my oneness with this divine presence, I am grateful for the knowingness that right here and now we are in a sacred space where we open ourselves up to a greater awareness of who God is and how God unfolds in each of our lives. With gratitude in my heart, I release this word into the universal law, knowing it is done unto thee as we believe. And together we say, and so it is. Today's reading is out of 365 Science of Mind text. And because the font is so tiny, I went ahead and rewrote it. So, 365 Science of Mind. We should believe that God is the invisible partner in our lives and affirm that divine love goes before us and prepares the way. We should permit ourselves to be guided, for there is something within us, deep at the center of our being, which knows that we ought to do, knows what we ought to do and how we ought to do it. We believe that the mind of God governs all things. We believe that God's intelligence is in the midst of us, is governing and guiding, counseling and advising, causing us to know what to do under every circumstance and at all times. We think, if we will but trust it. Therefore, every seeming problem has a right solution, and we may turn to the infinite knower for the answers. Take a minute to think about that as you go throughout your week. Love and blessings.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day. I think I could make it down. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue skies. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Here is the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Yeah, it's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day.
That's an old favorite of mine. Thank you, Bradfords. That was fabulous. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, you're evenly dispersed. It's so lovely when that happens. I feel a little more balanced. So it is a bright, bright, sunshiny day, and we are into some weather that makes my heart happy. And I have a message to deliver this morning that I'm a little bit excited about. I have some fun things to share with you. The research this week was fun, and the point I'm trying to make, I think, will be fairly straightforward for you. So I wanted to begin by telling you about an experience of something that happened in my life in 1998. My mother was diagnosed and called to hospice care, and I lived in Southern California, and my only sibling, my sister, lived in Chicago, and they predicted my mom would have about 3 months, and she did. And my sister and I decided to go home. Not wasn't our home. My parents had retired in Bakersfield. Good old Bakersfield. But I see some of you have driven through there. And so we kind of put our lives on hold, and we moved in with Mom and Dad, and we did this beautiful holy work of just loving them and doing the duties that go along with that kind of a process in life. So what happened for me was that I was kind of new in the teaching. I had the foundational classes, and then I manifested this year abroad, and then we came back, and it took me a year to reassimilate. Now I found a church that I really like close to my house, a little Science of Mind church, and I started to take classes again, and I was taking the treatment and meditation class. I also was facilitating a Course of Miracles on Monday nights. So from Bakersfield, it was about a 2.5-hour drive from where we lived in Southern California. So I would come home on Monday morning. I would drive back to LA. I would, on Monday night, join my husband. We would he would join me in facilitating that class. We would go to dinner, and the next afternoon at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I took my treatment and meditation class, my Science of Mind. Boy, did I need that class at that time in my life. And then I would scoot back to my mom and dad's house in Bakersfield. Problem was, I didn't have a very reliable car. So my husband had rented something that he felt comfortable. You know, when you go from LA to Bakersfield, you got to go over that grapevine. How many of you have been over the grapevine before? I see some people that know that. High, big old mountain, and it's pretty wide. It's well paved, but there's a lot of truckers. And God bless you, John, for doing that work. But have you ever had to use one of those pullouts? They scared me so much. What do they call it? The emergency ramp for when they lose their brakes. It's like, oh, I hope they're not behind me. And when it happens, you know, it's always kind of scary to cross over that big mountain. But at any rate, I've got this rental car. So after a few weeks of this routine of coming home on Monday, spending the night at home, having a lovely dinner with my husband, we would always go to dinner after the Course in Miracles. So it was a late dinner. It was about 8:30 at night. And we favored this Japanese restaurant or a Chinese restaurant. And this particular night, we stopped in to get Chinese food. Not many people in the restaurant. They're getting ready to close. And we begin to have a conversation, and I'm feeling kind of tired and anxious. And my husband says to me, we got to make a decision about the car here. We've got this rental car. Why don't you just let me get you a new car now while you're here, before you go home tomorrow? Let's just get a car. And I, in the restaurant, break into these boisterous tears. I start crying, this heartfelt, hard cry. And I said to him, it took me a while to compose myself, but I eventually said to him, okay, I get it. My car won't live forever, and my mom won't live forever, and this is the cycle of life. Yes, you can buy me a car. So he says now, because he's such a funny man, he says, with the best sense of humor ever, he says, how about you let me buy you one of those Ford Mustang convertibles? And I had had a Mustang, but I had not had a convertible before. So I said, okay, but he had a plan, because right next to the restaurant was a Ford dealer. So we hurry up and finish our food, going to try and see if they're still open. We walk over there after dinner, and we left the car in the parking lot of the Chinese food place. So we're walking over there, and the Ford dealer has one of those huge signs way up in the sky, and it's flashing neon lights, and it says, Mustang convertibles on sale. And so it's like, oh, this is perfect. And so we go in and we pick out, they're still open, we pick out a car. And now he goes in to do the paperwork and work the deal. And I decide I'm going to stay out in the parking lot, and I'm pacing in the parking lot and praying. Remember, I'm taking the prayer and meditation class. I'm going through a pretty stressful experience. And I'm pacing, and I think I was thinking things like, is this the right time to buy? You know, I was being overly practical and having all this conversation. And so I asked God to give me a sign. And I'm walking all by myself. He's in there working the deal. And I'm walking around, and I see this big old, I don't know, Illumina or something. And the license plate on the car, it was a used car, and the license plate had a certain combination of numbers that I decided was a sign from God that that must be the proper car, because it was far too big a coincidence. Hugh comes out of the office, and I went, honey, is it too late? I think I changed my mind, and I want this car over here. And he said, he holds up the keys. Oh, yep, it's too late. This is your car now. You're driving home the Mustang. So I drive the Mustang home. It's great news. We can get the rental car back. The next day I go to my prayer class, and the class always started out with, so what prayer demonstrations have you come up with this week? What kind of things are you praying for? How are you seeing prayers answered in your life? So I tell my story. And I tell the story pretty much like I just told you. And by the way, my husband's version of this story is if we had had Japanese that night, I'd have been driving the little convertible LeBaron, the Chrysler LeBaron, because next to that restaurant was a different car dealer. So the minister says, what are your stories? And I share my story about, the break. I cry, and and this is hard work, this hospice stuff, and then I get this car, and I tell the whole story just the way I told you. Probably not really. I probably have embellished the story through the years, but I get done, and I'm talking about the sequence of numbers in the license plate, and the minister laughs. She does this really pleasant laugh, and she goes, well, that's very rich. What a rich story. God gave you a flashing billboard in bold colors, and you're still looking for a sign from God. And that, my friends, is what we do. This is how we move through our lives very frequently, wanting God to give us a sign without realizing that the truth is always right in front of us, and that we can be in constant communication with the divine. Thank you for the Reverend Susan, the prayer and the reading, and even the song that the Bradfords chose really put this all into a context of what I want to speak to today. We will see what we will see, because we are always creating the story of our own lives. We understand that we are attaching meaning to all the things we see and experience in life, and creating that version of our life as we retell it and embellish it and take meaning out of it in all kinds of ways. The message this morning is about the power of vision. And I am specifically talking about the idea of vision in relationship to seeing the God stuff, in recognizing sort of the fingerprints of God in our lives and in the details of our lives, in our creative ideas and our decisions and the ways we move into accomplishing things. William James, whom I quote from time to time, was a fabulous thought leader in the late 19th century. He was an American philosopher. He was a psychologist, and sometimes we refer to him as the father of American psychology. But he said this. Listen to these words. Thought is obscure. Lightning flashes with darting gleams, but That's the way truth is. See, thought is obscure, and then we are busy in our minds with so many thoughts moving around, and there are these little flashes of lightning, like darting gleams. I love that statement, and then he adds that bold, but that's the way truth is. And I feel like that's how life is for us. When we start to tune in and recognize that those moments of recognition are divine, that it's hardly never a neon sign flash unless you make it that, right? It's not the numbers on a license plate that have the biggest things. Now, we can use those. We can see, this is the way I see the hand of God, and those moments remind me that right where I am, the infinite wisdom of the universe is right there. And there are benefits to recognizing that. It reminds us to go back to the power and the presence. It reminds us, I love, Reverend Susan, how you said something about understanding God in a bigger way. There's a different concept. Richard Rohr says we have given a face to that reality with a capital R, right? We're always trying to humanize God, and what we do when we think of God like us is we make what God is and the way we have this divine influence and truth in our lives, we smallen it. So it's a tiny shard of truth that ripples or resonates in me sometimes, and sometimes it even takes our breath away a little bit. And then we hunker in and recognize the presence, the power, the connection. So that shard of truth for me, at first it looked like a Mustang, and then it looked like some other older used car that wasn't nearly as exciting. And I was seduced by the order of numbers, the order in the numbers. And I ponder, why does that happen? And I think that you could say, we could analyze it in all kinds of ways, but first of all, I just want to say, I don't really think God cares what car I drive. And in fact, I'm sometimes amused when people come and went, look, I manifested this great car. And I want to say, and how much did you manifest for the car payment? You know, it's not like it, you know, it's like we start following the guidance, and then the universe, it's like things get to be in order. And then we see that there's this flow of life where everything works out. So perhaps my doubting in the 11th hour like that, it had more to do with my own sense of worthiness. I had barely said, yes, you can buy me a new car, right? And now I'm faced with this dilemma of like, oh, was that a bad decision or a good decision? And none of that mattered. None of that was really what was unfolding in that moment. And it turned out to be a really amazing, positive, good choice. It's tempting. It's really, we all know this. It's tempting to use God like some sort of oracle that is guiding us to choose the right stuff, or sometimes we pray that there'll be good weather on our vacation, or we just pray for success in a task. But when we begin to reorganize our understanding of who and what we are praying to, we get an opportunity to let God have a break and use prayer as a way we reinforce the changing of our own mind, our own perspective, so that we can recognize that there is order and harmony in that divine pattern. And then we will definitely make choices that are of a higher order. The power of vision is to see God in that new light. It's more than we have thought it was. So when we're talking about vision as a darting gleam of light that points us to truth, we're talking about an inner vision. We're talking about a greater sense of clarity or understanding or acceptance of how life goes. I almost said Hugh. Dr. Holmes, forever and always, love you, honey. Holmes said it this way: each of us should seek that beam of light within and follow it to the greater light. Seek that shard of light within and then know that that leads us there. And then we begin to understand that light, that aliveness, that shard of truth is in absolutely every living thing and always present. But he went on to say, Holmes, that is not Hugh, Holmes went on to say that we must find that light, find it, recognize it, name it, and then we acquiesce. We surrender to it, he says. And we surrender then all that has made us unhappy. Would you be willing to find the light and give up all the things you worry about and all the things that concern you and all the things we hang on to as if they have any sense of importance in our now moment living? Surrender, see that light, acquiesce, surrender to all that makes you unhappy, and then, and only then, God can fully pronounce himself through us and in us. Such loving advice. We return again and again to that space in consciousness, recognizing that there's this divine order, that there's always this way we are constantly evolving and improving our vision. We're developing that inner sight, that way to see things at a different level. And that is a way in which we are evolving the consciousness of humanity, our own individually and as well as the collective. And that is the nature of life, to expand. It expands our possibilities, but it expands our world to do that. Now, I have this tree in my front yard that I planted, 3 or 4 years ago. And I got it as a new plant. It was fairly small, and the landscaper staked it up really beautifully so it'd be sturdy through the weather. And about a year ago, I went out and I noticed that nobody told me to take the stakes out. Now, if my husband was still around, he would have probably that was the kind of thing he'd have thought about. And I looked at the tree really closely, and I saw that, you know how they take wire and they put like a piece of hose or something, it's some kind of a rubber, I don't know, protection. And some of that rubber with the wire in it, holding the tree taut, the trees, as the trunk started to get thicker, it started to grow over that, rubbery, wiry thing that was holding it in place. The nature of life is to grow and to overcome anything that appears to be holding it back. We must never forget that. The tree, I bought it, it's a pistache. It's so beautiful. And it drops all of its leaves in the wintertime. And then in the spring, this magic happens. And what I notice is that tree loves the longer days of sunlight. It thrives in the light, and so do we. We long for that light. We seek to see that light and to recognize it. And when we do recognize a tiny shard of light within us, that is when the truth will dawn upon us of itself. Teilhard de Chardin was published when he was no longer a priest, and he wrote so many amazing things, but in the 1950s, one of the books published was called Human Energy. It should be a must-read for all of us. But he says this really incredible, this is why I love him. He says these things that I can feel that divine resonance within me when I read his work. And he was talking about what would it have been like to be part of those early human families. Imagine that you're in a clan and you're nomads and you travel from here and there, and your group has grown pretty large, and you're now traveling to places that you have never been before. Geography you're not familiar with at all. And you come upon a beautiful forested area. And imagine that you've never seen a forest before. What would that be like? To see giant trees and wildlife and things blooming and aliveness everywhere, mosses and just things you've never encountered before. Right before your eyes, you could touch it. And then he goes on and he says, but what would it have been like to cross a mountain or a huge hill, and you see when you get to the peak this vast ocean? What must it have been like to have those experiences of being the first humans to witness those things and to try and wrap your consciousness when it's out of the realm of what seems normal to you? And what would it have been like to then get down to the shore level and to stand in the sun and to see the waves breaking on the rocks, and maybe you even see a wave spout or a whale spout or an otter or a seal? What would that have been like when that was not in your reality whatsoever? See, I love reading things that make me, allow me to imagine, and it stirs something within me to my very core. And then Teilhard said this: the crust of earth is always changing, so too are the edges of human consciousness. Yes, let there be light. Let us develop the vision to see and recognize that divine light. And then, as Dr. Holmes likes to say, let us see as God must see. When Dr. Holmes defined what light was, he said it's the inner capacity in humans to perceive and assimilate the divine idea. So we can't see spiritual things with the naked eye, but we can feel them. We can recognize there's a certain sensibility of how we connect to those things in a different way. It's about having faith, and it's the way that it grows our conviction for this thing called life. Hebrews, it says that faith is the evidence of those things that are not seen. Yet somehow we have this deep inner knowing that there's more going on. There's a chapter in the Science of Mind book. I always tease Reverend Clyde about it. It's a chapter on physical conditions, and I think it's one of the most important chapters in the whole book. That's the part we argue about. And there's a list of different ailments, and so you can look up something. You can look in the index in the back of the book, and kind of like Louise Hay, but a little less specific, which I prefer. And it gives you a page reference. And so I saw that vision is actually a subheading, because then Holmes will offer some affirmations and talk about a spiritual perspective you might alter a little bit in your own reading or an understanding. You might dive a little deeper. And this section on vision just coincidentally happens to come just before the one on constipation, which I recommend everybody read, and you should read it every so often because it's really good. There is no greater understanding of the law of circulation than those few pages where he talks about body functions. 231 is where constipation is. I know that. I recommend it when I'm sometimes doing counseling. But the reason that's an important chapter is because the vital energy in our human bodies, most of us know this because we study mind-body connection, but the vital energy in our body has to circulate in a proper way. You got blood, you got air, you got waste, you got all of that, your food. And when there's any interference in that circulation, that's when we develop illnesses. So that's why. It's a funny story. I know it's a funny thing to talk about on a Sunday morning. But today we're talking about vision. So that was just a little bonus, free, no extra charge for all of that. On the page before that where he speaks of vision, he says, in cases of defective sight. See, I like looking at the problem. It tells me right where to go for the truth. And here's a good example of that. in cases of defective sight, declare that spiritual vision is clear and that your faith in spiritual substance is unshaken. When faith touches a certain point in our consciousness and the light of spiritual understanding then dawns upon us, there you have it in his words, when the light of spiritual understanding dawns upon us, then we glorify the good. Then God's good can be expressed through us in our experience as us. This is how we bring more love to the planet. This is how we aim to have a more peaceful experience in our living. So he is speaking to us on the physical idea of sight, and he's relating it in a metaphysical way to a spiritual truth so that we can understand that the human body, you see how the human body is connected to what we believe and what we think about and the choices we make. So spiritual vision as an inner knowing can then contribute to our physical well-being. To our physical well-being. Your spiritual open alignment flowing in that beautiful divine flow of life brings it all back home again. So we are seekers of that truth. We want to clarify our vision. We want to let God be glorified through the choices we make in the life we live. But the history of humanity has shown us that in the early days of spiritual traditions, the beginning of them, that before we had scientific understanding of anything, people were just looking to be on the good side of God, or that mysterious entity that brought both good and also destroyed, could be very destructive and challenging, or bad things would happen as well. All of it they gave to God. So it's logical that humankind, as consciousness developed, that we would organize religion, or that we would look for people of authority that we always believe are a little bit closer to God. It's why we look for gurus, or we take a lot of classes and we study with great teachers, because we still continue to want to have answers to all of our questions. I notice, however, we're more skeptical now than we used to be, especially post-lockdown. There's a little more skepticism going on. We're a little more divided than we used to be. And all of the leadership, the clergy journals that I study and read to stay current with all the trends, they keep telling us that something's happening. We already know, we're witnessing it, we can see it, but it's interesting to see that people are less dependent on religion. And they say that that's because we're less trusting than we used to be. But I think that there's been a trend long before this shift. We used to blame it on the millennials, but people are feeling a call deep in their being to be spiritual but not religious. And I do believe that's a good thing. Here's something interesting that will probably never happen again in the history of life. Tomorrow is May 20th. Anybody know what anniversary that is? Is it really? Happy anniversary! Oh my God, that is so cool! That is so cool. Well, then this will be important to you. You will find this interesting. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the meeting of the Nicene Council in 325. That's about 1,700 years ago. And what happened was Constantine was the emperor of the Roman Empire, and things started going bad. And Constantine said he wasn't a bad ruler. He wasn't also not necessarily a good ruler. I couldn't find any credible one side or the other. He kind of did both, because probably emperors did have to be both good and bad. So imagine it's 325. They're youngins compared to us. And the Roman Empire is beginning to fall apart a little bit. Things aren't going well. And people are starting to fight, and they're fighting about religious ideas. They're looking for some source that knows the truth. But what's happening is people are getting more complex in the way they're thinking about things, and they're disagreeing, and they're arguing and fighting, and little wars were breaking out here and there. And so Constantine knew the Roman Empire was in trouble, so he made a decision to gather all the scholars of religion together. He invited more than 300 bishops. It actually says when you read the study that bishops from all over the world were invited. Their world was a little different then than with the way we see the world now. And he gets them all together, and that meeting started on May 20th. The problem is it lasted until the middle of July. It was a 2-month meeting, and he wouldn't let them go home until they resolved some pretty serious issues. And one was, what is the proper date to celebrate Easter? That was a big, big argument. And the other was the whole nature of who is Jesus? Is Jesus begotten, or is Jesus created? Is he a man, or is he a God? Is he co-eternal with God, or co-equal with God? And these are the kinds of things they fought about. So Constantine organizes this meeting, and he tells them, you don't get to leave until you make some official rules, some documents that we're going to sign, and we're going to change the future of the world, and we're going to solve all these problems. But it was a little trickier than they thought. Now, keep in mind, he invited them to his compound. This is where the emperor lives. And so one of the guys that I researched, really fun read, Robin Myers, a man who's kind of a progressive Christian. So they're a little more straight and narrow than we are, but very open-minded. And so he described it this way. He said that Constantine held all the bishops were held hostage at a plush lakeside compound in Nicaea until they all agreed on a specific doctrine. They were wined and dined. They were treated like royalty for 2 months, so it wasn't horrible. But they did have to come to an agreement, and they finally did, and voila, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Trinity, was born from that as a church doctrine that was well adopted, not just in Catholicism and the Orthodox churches, but majority of the Protestant Christians adopted that same idea of the Holy Trinity and when to celebrate Easter. And the birth of religious dogma was born. It happened. And so from there we get a different take on who was Jesus and what Christianity represents. And what we see is that there was a point, then we became more religious, and the life he lived was minimized, and now we're sort of, it feels to me like we're really taking that back. We're looking again, and all faiths there are doing the same. So the Christian faiths anyhow. Well, even some of the non-Christian faiths are looking at Jesus in a new way. So could you imagine that happening now? I mean, it might help, you never know, but people are different now. There's a big difference in the consciousness of the people between the 3rd century and the 21st century. 1,700 years of human consciousness evolving. Now we have science. We can look at the teachings and the advancements of science. We have instant access to information. We have so much more knowledge than we used to have. And so that same author, Robin Myers, said it would be similar. Imagine the difference between the consciousness of humanity in 325 and the 21st century. It would be like looking at a 15-year-old and how different they become by the time they're 40 years old. And then he wrote this statement, which really is interesting. He said, He was speaking about the new little souls that are coming to the planet right now. There's a whole bunch in my family. We had twins recently. We got cute little babies all over the place now. So those sweet little beings that are coming into as human beings, they're starting at a higher point in consciousness than we did when we first came to the planet. And if you look at the difference in what happened in the 3rd century, the 3rd or the 4th century, it's an incredibly distinct difference. And that will continue to be truth. Evolution continues to move in that direction. And that is a really good way, a healthy way to look at what it means to talk about the evolution of consciousness on the planet. So, you have to have vision is to see the light. Sometimes we say that. Oh, I see the light. Something suddenly breaks through into our understanding. But what we understand then in a spiritual way is that divine guidance exists and it's advancing, and we're always evolving and developing new ways of looking at things. So here is my theme quote, which is interestingly, I usually give it at the top of my message when I announce the title. Here is the quote I chose for this idea of the power of vision from Dr. Holmes. It's not enough merely to know that divine guidance exists. You must use it. We have to use it. There's power in vision. I looked in the glossary in the Science of Mind textbook, and I wanted to see how did Holmes define vision. It was kind of an afterthought. And this is what he said. He said, keep open the avenues of receptivity. Stay open to new ideas. Do you hear this? Open, receptive and open. Choose to see beauty, and he capitalized see. S-E-E is all capitalized. Choose to see beauty. For in God there is no near vision, there is no far vision, there is no weak vision, there is no blurred vision. In God there is only perfect vision. The crust of the earth is always changing. So too is the edge of human consciousness. Let us unify in our faith and our conviction that there is more, and let us never lose hope. And that's what I wanted to say today. Take a nice, deep, cleansed breath. We will gently move into these holy words of prayer. We just let all the words and the ideas that have been spoken this morning, we allow them to fall about the room, even as we stay open to the shard of truth, of light that is ours. For there is power in vision, in recognizing that truth. I feel the love of that holy presence right here in this room, and I know that it is that same presence of love and of life and of peace and of beauty that abides within us no matter where we are. No matter what is going on in the circumstances of our own lives or in the world, there is that presence of God's sweet love. There is a way in which the light of truth within us, it cannot be obscured, it cannot be blocked or diminished. And in this very experience of sitting in this sacred environment, of hearing new ideas and looking at historical old changes and studying the advancement of the human consciousness. That we remember yet again, right where we are, is the fullness of God, is the fullness of truth, is the activity of life itself. And so I feel that activity within me. I feel that resonance of the movement, the darting gleams of truth that awaken us in such a way that we can rise to higher levels of understanding, of seeing, of embodying the vision that we call the Christ vision. That we can see those truths and understand them and apply them in our living so that we do continue to grow and expand in our own understanding. And in this way, I know that as we feel that activity of life within us, there is a quickening. And it is that movement of spirit within that heals anything that may appear to ail us. It is that activity of God itself in our lives and in all our affairs and in all of our relationships that heals us and restores us to a sense of wholeness, of connection to each other. We are invigorated yet again as the truth of that inner perfection begins to shine the glory of God's goodness. We live and move and have our being in this beautiful truth. So we are inspired by this power of vision. We are encouraged to know that all of the global messy things that tend to frighten us are simply a part of this process of things being divinely reordered as the consciousness of humanity continues to grow and expand. That the crooked places are straightened, that we find our ways back to loving each other, that we practice forgiveness and welcome relationships and connections. For we are wired to be with each other. We are designed in this miraculous way to experience the movement of love and of peace and of beauty at that level of connection that is divine. So I am grateful for this. I am grateful to know that the infinite wisdom of Spirit itself is sourcing and fueling this spiritual community in such a way that we can witness the love that is here, that we can enjoy having coffee together after the message, that we can plan activities and events together, and we can show up for the business of church and the board meeting that follows this day. So I know everything is indeed in perfect order. I rejoice in witnessing the beauty of the orchestration of the hand of God in all of it. And I say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, life. I release these words and I just allow them to be. And together we say, and so it is.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
All right. Thank you, Bradford. So now is the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives and the abundance of our community. So we don't pass around the offering plate, just a friendly reminder. We have drop boxes in the back of the room on the way into Papke Hall, so maybe you can join us for fellowship in Papke Hall. We also have one out in the bookstore. And so we appreciate any tithe or any giving that you give to support our community. So thank you very much. So let's say our giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.
Please rise for our last song. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Sing that with me. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future while I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. And sing it. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Woo.
Yes, it does. It feels great to be alive. So let's say our closing affirmation. So repeat after me. As I expand my consciousness, my vision stays open to more beauty in the world.
My vision stays open to more beauty in the world.
And so it is.